All right, let me just wait for a few people to populate here and then we'll get started. Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome. This is the January 3rd, 2022 meeting of the Community Advisory Council to Iolero. First of all, Happy New Year to everybody. I wanted to let those in attendance know that Spanish interpretation is provided as an accommodation if requested in advance. I don't believe that we've had any requests for this evening's meeting to be interpreted. However, if there are any of those requests for this or future meetings, please send those to the CAC and Iolero office as soon as possible so that those arrangements can be made. Similarly, if you have a disability which requires accommodations or an alternative format to assist you in observing and participating in our meeting, please contact the CAC secretary at 707-565-1534, which is the Iolero office, and we can make those arrangements for you for any future meetings. Regarding public comments at our CAC meetings, members of the public are free to address the CAC. Public comments should fall under the subject matter jurisdiction of the CAC, and they will be time limited at the discretion of the director and the chair. The community is also invited, in addition to public comments, to communicate with Iolero staff and CAC members through email. Members of the public may email cac@sonoma-county.org for any items or suggested topics to be placed on future agendas. Moving on to our agenda, going to item number 1. First, we have the agenda review. Melanie, are there any changes to our agenda or any information that has been updated since we've released this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. We will now take a roll call of the CAC members. Vice Chair Barrera, will you do our roll call for today?
Happy New Year, everyone. Councilmember Bailey.
Present.
Councilmember Estrada.
Present.
Councilmember Flores. Councilmember Pearl.
Present.
Councilmember Pemberton.
Present.
Councilmember Solomon.
Present.
Councilmember Woods.
Present.
Vice Chair Barrera and Chair Zelig.
Present. Thank you.
Welcome.
At this time, we are going to review the minutes from the last meeting, which was held on December 6th of 2021. Those draft minutes are included in everybody's agenda. Does a member of our CAC have any changes or corrections or anything that they wish to modify or correct for the minutes from the last meeting? Nope. Okay, I see no responses. At this time, then, I will open up for public comment. The public comment we're opening is solely for the agenda review and the draft of the agenda from last meeting's minutes prior to our approval as the CAC. So I will open up for public comment. And again, this is regarding the minutes of the last meeting and the agenda review. I do see Evan P. listed here on Zoom. Please go ahead and speak. You will have 2 minutes for this topic once we begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I believe this was part of last meeting's agenda, and I just wanted to ask if Sheriff Essick was personally contacted to participate in this meeting, and if so, what the results of that were, because he has made commentary regarding not being invited to the table, so to speak, or to involve, but it seems that when he gets opportunities to do so, he chooses to pass on them. So I just wanted that to be clarified, and I believe that is a carryover from the last agenda minutes into this meeting.
Yes, thank you. So yes, the sheriff has been invited to this evening's meeting specifically regarding agenda item number 3. He has declined to attend this evening's meeting. When we get to agenda item number 3, I will read the letter that was recently received from the sheriff, which has recently been provided to all members of the CAC. That was not included with our agenda packet because it was received afterwards, but it will be, it has been received and will be read in full so that the public is aware of the sheriff's decision and why. Okay, now I will close public comment. I don't see anybody else who wishes to give public comment on this topic. So I will close the public comment for agenda item number 1. And at this point, I will be asking for a motion to approve the minutes of the December 6th, 2021 meeting. That was a council member Pemberton. Great. Is there a second of that motion?
Second.
And I saw Mr. Pearl, thank you, Council Member Pearl. And then we would like to take a vote. Melanie, will you ask our council members for a vote on the item agenda number 1, the approval of the minutes from December 6th, 2021?
Okay, I have Council Member Bailey. You weren't present for that.
I was
meeting,
going to say
right?
abstaining.
Okay. Council Member Barrera.
Aye.
Council Member Estrada.
Aye.
Flores is absent. Council Member Pearl.
Aye.
Council Member Pemberton.
Aye.
Council Member Solomon.
Aye.
Council Member Woods also. She
I'll be
was not
abstaining
present.
I'll be abstaining as well.
Council Member Zelik.
Aye. Great. Great, thank you very much. Okay, we will now, those minutes have been approved from the December 6th meeting and will be entered. We will now turn to agenda item number 2. This is a discussion regarding the recruitment of a new Iolero director and information about the interim director if available, and consideration of passage of a resolution regarding the selection procedures. The CAC has been provided with a draft resolution, which was included in our agenda packet. What we will do with this item is we will be hearing from the county representatives from HR regarding the search for both an interim and a full director for Iolero, as well as how that process will take place. And we will then open up for a panel discussion and public comment regarding that process. And toward the end, we will seek a vote on our resolution regarding what we hope will be a public and community involved process for seeking of our new director. So with that, I'll open up for our presentation by our human resources representatives on the recruitment process. I believe we have joining us Jade Kim and Spencer Keywood.
And Christina Kramer.
Oh, and Christina
Yeah,
Kramer. Thank you.
I'm not sure why. This is Christina Kramer. I am showing and viewed as Jade Kim. Jade forwarded me a link to the Zoom as a participant. I clicked on that link and I'm showing up as Jade. I'm not sure how that technicality happened, but I am Christina Kramer. I'm the county's human resources director. I see Jade in another box on Zoom, so hopefully everything's working fine. So I just want to explain that.
Thank you, Kramer. I appreciate it. And welcome. Thank you.
Okay, and with me today is Spencer Keywood, and Spencer is our recruitment and classification manager. And Spencer and I are sort of the leads on department head recruitments. And so what I'll do today, we have a presentation prepared with you just to go through some points about the recruitment process, the past recruitment process, what we found out about what King County did, and what some of our ideas and concepts are. So Spencer, if you don't mind sharing your screen, that'd be great.
Will do.
Okay, so First, I wanted to point out that the recruitment process is HR conducts the recruitment process at the direction of the Board of Supervisors. And so any concepts that we're discussing today, particularly some of those ideas that are similar to what King County did, that really is up to the board to direct the county and us as the facilitators of that process. So we're here to take into consideration your thoughts and from which we can finalize some recommendations to the board, as well as share some of the input that we received. So go ahead, Spencer, and advance. So what we're doing is, this is the first slide where I just wanted to talk to you and review with you the 2018 recruitment process. I don't want to assume that anybody knew what we did when we hired the prior director. We worked with a recruitment firm by there you go, by Bob Murray and Associates, and the specific recruiter that we worked with is Gary Phillips. He was the lead on the recruitment. They're a well-known public executive search firm in California. They do have related experience. They did our initial Iolero recruitment when we first established the office and the position. And then, as you can see, they've done a few other entities, comparable positions. And so Gary and Human Resources have worked together in the past, as well as the Board of Supervisors. And what he does is we work with him on developing the recruitment brochure. And then part of their role is to, what we did back then was they developed the recruitment brochure in 2018. We honed down the ideal candidate characteristics for the recruitment brochure, and that recruitment was posted for 4 weeks. Gary, their firm conducted a candidate assessment, presented all the qualified candidates to the county administrator and the HR director. And then the county administrator confirmed the candidates to interview. Then they went to a set of two concurrent panels on a day that was coordinated. And that panel's role was to make recommendations on who should be interviewed by the board. There were several community panel members, and then a mix of department head and others, what we call subject matter experts, people who really kind of know what this actual work is. Representing the community at the time was Dr. Rick Brown. He was on the Community Advisory Council. Oscar Chavez with Human Services. Unfortunately, I have to mention the late Evelyn Cheatham, as well as the late Vince Harper. Kevin Jones, who was the Commission on Human Rights at the time for the County of Sonoma. Mike Vale, who was the president of, and still is, Deputy Sheriff's Association, and Donna Zapata, who was a past member of the Human Rights Commission. And I think, if my memory corrects me, she might have been involved in the initial development of the Office of Iolero. And then on the department heads and the subject matter experts, we had Sheriff Essick, Paul Henderson, who was the San Francisco Department of Police Accountability Executive Director, Kathy Lee, who was the Police Review Commission Officer for the City of Berkeley, Kathleen Posey, our former public defender, Jill Ravitch, our district attorney, and Francine Tourneur, who was the Director of Office of Public Safety Accountability for the City of Sacramento. So that was the makeup of sort of the involvement of the people who assisted who to move forward to the board. It was a very small recruitment, and a couple of candidates moved forward to the board, and the board made the selection. So that's what happened in 2018, just to give you some context. What we found out about the King County recruitment, they worked with a firm called Ralph Anderson Associates. They're actually based here in, I believe, in the Sacramento area. Are an organization that is very comparable to Bob Murray and Associates. They developed a 10-member recruitment advisory committee that was established to work with their county staff and Ralph Anderson to provide input on ideal candidate characteristics. We're presuming that's sort of to inform what was stated in the recruitment brochure, as well as that also helps inform what type of interview questions, what you're trying to glean from that interview process. They posted the recruitment for about 6 weeks. And then they worked with a subcommittee of their council. Their council appears to be equivalent of our board. They actually have a larger council than our 5, based on what we could see in their structure. And that council, subcommittee identified the top 2 candidates. And then those top 2 candidates met with their Lero is what they call it, staff. And then they conducted 2 virtual community meetings where there was candidates introduced themselves for about 5 minutes. They had 3 pre-planned interview prompts that the candidates addressed. And then there was a 20-minute Q&A process with members of the community that were, since it was a public meeting. And then there were those community members who participated in that Q&A received a survey from Ralph Anderson to get their feedback on the candidates. And then those candidates were interviewed by the 10-member recruitment advisory committee. All that feedback was provided to the council, and the council interviewed those top 2 and made their selection. This is what we could find based on the information that was shared with us. If anybody knows more specifics, when we get to that place, please share what you may know that we weren't able to find out over the break. We weren't able to reach anybody. Most people were on vacation last week. Okay, so department head recruitments do take quite a while. This one in particular, because department head recruitments, we usually post them for a minimum of 4 weeks. We also need to account for people's availability. We have a lot of interview processes and dates to plan out. We're working with the Board of Supervisors schedule. And in this one in particular, there is the background process that is required for the position. We do work with an outside firm, and so that outside firm conducts the background process. Generally, we see that taking anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So that's essentially an extra month. So we anticipate that from the time that we open this recruitment, it's probably at least a good 4 months before somebody might be actually appointed and beginning in the position. So with that, we have some ideas. One of the ideas is the CAC create a subcommittee, and you can provide input on ideal candidate competencies and priorities. Usually what we list in the recruitment brochure is some of the priorities of that department in the coming immediate future for that new director to take on. And then with between Human Resources and Gary Phillips, the recruiter, we would finalize a draft brochure that would be reviewed and approved by the board. Likely, again, advertising it for 4 to 5 weeks, which is pretty typical with the process. And the recruiter, Gary Phillips, would do the pre-candidate assessment. So that's one of the benefits of working with the recruiter is the networking. One, they have the capacity, a lot more capacity than Human Resources does when we do something in-house, because we're serving the entire community and doing all the recruitments for all the other departments. So the recruiter has a lot more capacity to do networking. And then they also have the capacity to pre-screen usually the candidates that are on the more well-qualified end. A lot of times what we find in department head recruitments, we might get 20 candidates, but it could be about a dozen who look viable. And there are some that are pretty obvious that they wouldn't meet the qualifications. And so they're not vetted any further by the recruiter. I think, what's hard to tell with Kings County, they said that they got 32 candidates. We don't know how many of the 32 were kind of in that top tier range. If we were to get 8 to 10 in the top tier range, I think that would be good. I will tell you that generally speaking, we are seeing a downward trend in the number of candidates that we're getting for all of our recruitments. And this is a very unique position. There's not a ton of people, and the labor pool for this role is not as well established, although going back to 2015, we were it was very new field, but it's certainly grown significantly over these past 6 years, which is a good thing because there are more qualified candidates. NACL has its certification, and so more and more people are getting into this line of work. So what we're talking about doing is having the subcommittee again help us with developing the verbiage for the brochure, and then they would screen the candidates, and we would invite likely around up to 8 candidates to interview for the process. The reason why I say 8 is because that is what we can do in a single interview day. And given on the next slide, we'll talk to you about the panels. And we usually, for all of our director recruitments, try to do a 1-day interview process because we're getting a lot of people involved in a panel and they give us their time, they volunteer their time to participate in this process. So these candidates would be interviewed by 2 panels. Each panel would be limited probably to a maximum of 9 individuals. I don't know if that would, at this point in time, we'll have to see if this is in person or if this is Zoom. Really, the COVID trend and what's happening with COVID will determine that. We've done very well. We've gotten very good at Zoom interviews over this past almost 2 years. So each panel being 9 individuals, you're talking about up to 18 individuals who could participate in these panel interviews, which we would definitely recommend would be a mix similar to what we've done in the past with county department heads, those who have the most working relationship with this position, hopefully a minimum of 3 subject matter experts, and up to 10 external stakeholders. And that's where we can get into CIC members, other members of the community. We also want to be mindful of balancing the sheriff's office. Could be, we might have the union president. The sheriff has participated in the interview process in the past as one of the department heads. So that they are stakeholders as well. And then these interview panels would identify top candidates, and then the board would interview the top candidates and narrow that down. And this is where we kind of try to get into something comparable with what King County did. I will admit, this is not something we've done before. This is this virtual community panel. There's pluses and minuses, and I certainly appreciate why the public interest in the feeling of importance. This will be the board's decision if they want to do something like this. Candidates being publicly named and interviewed could mean that they would self-select themselves out because of such a public process. They may not want their interests known until they are with their current employer or for whatever their reasons are, until they actually get a job offer. Normally, that's how much confidentiality is kept for the candidates. This would stray from that to try to balance the community's needs should the board our board be interested in this type of community panel discussion. I would envision if it is, it would function and operate very similar to what we learned that King County did. And then ultimately the board would make that selection, whether they interviewed candidates again or just heard feedback and made a decision since they had already interviewed them. You know, that's we can't tell, we can't foresee that process, but they certainly have the right to either appoint or talk to the candidates again based on this feedback. So those are ideas that we have. Spencer, did I miss any points that we had put in some talking points that you might want to jump in and fill in if I missed anything critical?
No, I think you covered everything. You did talk about the timeline, which I think was very important. You know, as Christina did indicate, this will be a lengthy recruitment process once we get the ball rolling on it. So I think that was important to mention. But no, you covered everything. Thank you.
Yeah. So in summary, CAC having a sort of a subcommittee to help us, community and external stakeholder input, and participating in the interview panels who are able to provide feedback on who the board should consider as in the next phase of interviews. And then potentially, if the board were to agree to a public process, something comparable with the community, and then the board makes the decision. So that's sort of some ideas that we have that we could discuss with the board, and then they can direct us. So I think that is pretty much what we wanted to share with you. We're here now for your reactions, give us input, anything you want to share with us, questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation and for the initial information on this process. I know before we get to this process for the main director, one of the questions that was brought up just as things were getting started was whether there's any new information about an interim director. Before we open up our panel discussion about the process for the full director, can you provide any information about the interim director and if there's how that search is going and when we might expect an interim director to be named?
Yeah, I expect, so an interim director, let me just put some perspective out there. Iolero is an extremely small office. And this is a very unique space, and an interim director giving its temporary, meaning giving that a fact that it's temporary while we do a recruitment, all of those things create some challenges in finding an interim. Our board has given us some direction on an interim. It's too soon for me to be able to share this with you, but I believe we have someone identified, and we will be able to have the proper direction after tomorrow's board meeting to then, how should I say this? Handle some of the technicalities of that position and how that will work. And then we'll be able to make an announcement. So that's a long answer to, I expect maybe about a week and a half, we'll be able to make an announcement.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, now I know we received a lot of great information. Personally, it was really great to see that the direction HR wants to take is similar and encompassing of a public process similar to what King County did up in Washington, to engage the public both through the CAC committee as well as through the virtual meetings that would happen once the candidates are narrowed down. So I'd like to open this up for our panel discussion for any questions that members of our panel have for HR or for any other items regarding this discussion. Councilmember Pemberton.
Hi, thank you so much, Ms. Kramer, for a really great presentation. I appreciate it. I had one question. You raised a concern about the public process, perhaps scaring off some potential candidates because of having to make public their desire to apply. And I wanted to, you said that often they don't want to tell their current employer until an offer has been made. Does that mean that the HR department, that Sonoma County doesn't do background reference checks on with current employers for candidates before they make an offer?
Oh, no, we do. The standard background steps would be, we identify the top 1 to 2 candidates. We then conduct references. We do, there's certain California laws on the background check processes and what you can do at certain phases.
Mhm.
So we run basically a first level background, and then we do a conditional job offer. And then we do the rest of the background process in an Iolero that would then jump into the law enforcement background. And then once that is successfully completed, then an official offer is made. So usually a candidate is, when they hear you are the top candidate, that's when they start to get a little bit more comfortable to tell their employer.
I see.
And
Thank
when
you.
they get
Great.
news of you're in the top 3, they're kind of like, well, you know, I'm sure I'm. So that's where, but the idea would be we would pre-announce it, you know, it would be disclosed in the recruitment brochure. So the expectations are established, and it wouldn't be a surprise.
Thank you.
Do any of our other members have questions for HR representatives? Okay, I see no specific questions. Are there any comments that others have regarding this process and what you think of it, specifically how it encompasses the community, virtual community meetings and so forth? Does anybody have any comments?
I just had a question. I had another question.
Councilman,
Thanks. I couldn't tell with the recommended slide of the process. Are you still thinking of using a consultant to do the pre-assessment?
Yes, Gary Phillips with Ralph Anderson will be the lead on this recruitment. He'll work very closely with Spencer, myself, our county administrator, and then our board of supervisors.
Just to correct if I can, Gary Phillips with Bob Murray and Associates.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you, Spencer.
You're welcome.
I'm curious how that pre-assessment works and how that looks and who's involved in that. Just because I'm worried about who can be left out through that pre-assessment. So that's just a thought that I'm having with that.
I appreciate that question. So let me clarify how that pre-assessment works. So the recruiter will give us the information for all candidates. They will not screen out and I mean, if a candidate is a grocery clerk, clearly they don't have the MQs, right? He might make mention of somebody like that. But anybody who possesses any sort of experience or qualifications that are within the reasonable range, he will share those candidates with us. And that assessment is really more of, tell me why you're interested in the position. Are there any, can you relocate? Give me a little bit more than what you submitted, because the candidates will submit a resume and perhaps a cover letter. And so it'll be kind of more of like a informational interview process where he'll glean more information about their background, their history, their interest, their experience. And then the recruiter presents that to the county to say, okay, here's so-and-so, this is their experience, this is what I learned. And so they take a very neutral position. They might put somebody and say, I think these are the top 5 I talked to 10. I think out of the 10, these are the top 5. But ultimately, it's whoever he's presenting that information to who makes the decision to invite them to forward to the interview process. So I hope that answers your question, Dora.
And then this is Evan Zelig. So from there, once we have those candidates, at that point is where, so the CAC will be involved in getting the recruitment brochure out, or at least making the recommendations to the board on what should be included. And for that, we can have community input. The next time we would then have that community input would be at these virtual community meetings once the candidate field is narrowed down, correct?
Yes, and you have community and external stakeholder input by virtue of the interview process too. Hopefully we'll have a good representation of people who are stakeholders to the position.
Who will determine who those external stakeholders are? Because often who determines who the stakeholders are, I guess, determines who really has a stake in this whole discussion. Who is out there seeking these stakeholders?
Well, usually what we're going to do is we would ask the board members if they have any ideas. We would ask yourselves if you have any suggestions. We would ask the sheriff's office if they have any suggestions. And then, we'll have to see how many names comes in and, who all that is. And then ultimately the board will approve the list of a presentation, recommendation would be given to them and they would approve the list.
Great.
Or they might delegate that to the CAO because in practicality to talk to them is limited. So they probably would delegate that to the county administrator. And I do want to just continue to remind ourselves that we're just talking conceptually. I don't want to get ahead of our board of supervisors. These are ideas that we would love to hear your input on, and thumbs up, thumbs down, thumb neutral, and we can share it with them.
Yeah, I think, again, for me, when I was looking at how King County did it and envisioning what I, was thinking for involving our community, I was hoping that there would be involvement of the CAC, which takes a lot of information from our community and can convey that information appropriately to the board. And also that there was some type of community involvement once we know who these candidates are, so we can learn a little bit more about them before a final decision is made. And of course, like King County did, have the surveys and allow not just participation from the public, but input from the public as well. It was very nice to see in your presentation that that both of those aspects are included, similar to how they are included in the resolution we are intending to vote on this evening. Are there any other council members that have questions or comments regarding the intended process and things that you either do want to see or did not like hearing? Any other comments? Okay. Yes.
I'd just like to really encourage, I acknowledge that it can be difficult for finalists to have to make the decision to announce their candidacy, but I do think that at the point that you're down to 2 finalists is probably not too much to ask. And I think that given the history of Iolero and the CAC and the Kaye Task Force before that, this is a topic of great interest to a lot of people in the community. And I think that allowing some direct representation from the community is an important part of that, our work. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Bailey.
Thank you. I would agree with what Nancy said, and I think in this position in particular, it does require that community impact. I think also this role has a serious community facing aspect to it. And it's really interesting to see how someone can handle that opportunity to be in front of the community and how they can handle that situation, because this role really does require to be outward facing and to have some difficult conversations. So it'd be really good also just to see how someone handles being under some of that pressure also.
Thank you. Any other council members with either comments or questions for HR or regarding this process? Okay, what I'd like to do now is open for public comments. I'd like to open this up for public comments. I will limit the public comments in this area to 3 minutes per person. Again, this is public comment only relating to agenda item number 2 concerning the recruitment of a new Iolero director. After we hear public comments, we'll bring it back for a vote on the resolution that's been given to all of us regarding a adoption of a process involving the public community process to engage the public and for public participation, similar to King County, and really, as explained, similar to how HR is intending to move this forward. It seems to fit well with how King County did it. So I'll now open up for public comment, and the first person is Evan P. When you are accepted for speaking, please go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. First, I'd just like to thank the work the HR department has put on this, as well as the CAC. I think following the King County model is ideal. That said, there's some context that I just want to bring home for consideration that I know is not new information for everybody, but is very important. Sonoma County just had the highest voter turnout in the whole state of California in our general election. That is very significant. Measure P passed with an overwhelming mandate with that voter turnout. This is not speculation or some sort of political wave or trend even regarding what the interests of the community are. And contextually, that stems from a history that is not just something that's past, but also very current with pending investigations about uses of excessive force, wrongful death, settlements, millions and millions of dollars being paid out, et cetera, inordinate amount of loss of life in the county jail, onward and onward. That said, it concerns me a little bit that we would even have the point brought up that the sheriff would be participatory in the process of selecting who has oversight on them. And I know that they may only have a small say in that. And obviously we do want a strong working relationship and rapport, because we'd like to think there's good faith amongst all parties here to do what's right for the community. That said, you don't negotiate oversight with the people you're having oversight with. And there's a credibility issue currently with Iolero. As somebody who was intimately involved with the Measure P campaign, there is a credibility issue with Iolero as Director Navarro has left it. The community has a little bit of distrust for them to actually enforce what it was voted upon with overwhelming support. And that forward-facing part that Councilmember Pemberton referred to, or I forget who it was, is very crucial. It's very crucial. So it's imperative that there be community input and participation, which is recommended, and I appreciate that. I'd also like the caveat added, if you're going to pass on a resolution, to eliminate the sheriff's participation from the process. And I don't think that violates any sort of law, any sort of labor law. They don't need anything to do with it ethically or legally. And I can appreciate they're wanting to be goodwill, but their job is to do their jobs, and independent oversight's job is a separate component. So I appreciate that, and I relinquish the rest of my time.
Thank you. The next person is Robert Edmonds. Robert, when you're able to speak on the Zoom, please go ahead, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert Edmonds. I was the vice chair of the Iolero task force, and I also served on the initial hiring committee for Jerry Threet. Going back and looking at the process with Bob Murray and Associates, I'm very glad that we're no longer using that particular firm for recruitment. I also had done recruitments for the Santa Rosa JC chief of police and lieutenant positions with Bob Murray. And that organization is very much pro-police. The personnel have police backgrounds, and they had a terrible track record with any form of diverse outreach and being able to reach out to different segments of the community to bring in a more diverse pool into the process. So I saw that at the JC, and I saw that as well with the recruitment where Jerry was ultimately hired. So I'm very heartened to see that we're looking at the King County model for this current recruitment. But I still have concerns regarding how the process moves forward, how it's weighted towards pro-police positions through the different panels that are constructed, the makeups of those panels, the people who are making the decisions. And for example, when I look at the pre-assessment process, I'm seeing all white people involved in that process. I don't know the demographics of the recruiter who's actually leading that. But if I look at HR staff, if I look at the county administrator, if I look at the members of the board of supervisors, they're all white faces. So I think this is really important when we start to look at how we do that outreach and make sure that this company doesn't have the same failings as Bob Murray and Associates had in the first initial outreach to candidates, and that we do have a more broadly diverse set of candidates to choose from. I'm really concerned that Mike Vale's name has been brought up into this process as a potential board member, or excuse me, the director or the president of the DSA, who's currently Mike Vale. He has been vocally, vehemently opposed to Measure P, which was, as Evan Phillips mentioned, overwhelmingly passed by voters. He's an out racist, and he should have no part, since the DSA is actually suing the county with the intention of disempowering all the provisions that went forward through Measure P through the will of the voters. So we really need to look at how we're selecting these people. Like, why do we have police on both of the panels, right? Why are there stakeholders that are—
Thank you, Mr. Edmonds.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I don't mean to cut you off. We are limiting public comment to 3 minutes for these agenda items, just so we can have enough members of our public have the opportunity to speak. Your comments are well received. Thank you. Next, Jerry Threet is on as a public commenter. Mr. Threet, once you are able to speak on Zoom, please go forward with your 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for taking my call. And this is a very important process that we're talking about tonight. So thanks for taking it up for consideration. There's a lot of things that are different this time than they have been in the past. And one of those is that the criteria for the director's selection is a little different than it has been in the past. Although the applicants must be attorneys, they need not be California attorneys this time around, and that broadens the pool of applicants that can come in and compete for the position. In addition, Measure P provides a lot of new authorities, including things that are very attractive to applicants for this kind of position, like a guaranteed minimum budget, some protection from political interference. And also there are new authorities that allow the department to be more effective in providing civilian oversight. So all of that should get you a good pool of applicants, in my opinion. Given the significant support and interest by the public in Iolero after passage of Measure P, I think robust public involvement in the recruitment and selection process are extremely important. Kings County did better than most jurisdictions by involving the public in selection between two finalists for their oversight director for their sheriff, a very similar position. But I think Sonoma County can do better by conducting an initial series of community meetings to gather public input on what the community considers most important in the next director, and the county can use an equity lens to guide that process, that initial process. This process would be assisted, made effective by HR assigning an analyst to support and document input from those kinds of meetings, and that input could be carried forward into the process and used to shape the characteristics by which the candidates will be ranked in the selection process. One more point about the interview panels mentioned by Ms. Kramer. When I went through the first process, I believe there were 3 panels, a community panel, an expert panel with oversight practitioners, and a final panel that had law enforcement department heads, which was the DA, sheriff, and probation department. The community stakeholders on the interview panels are very important, and in my opinion, should include those active, who were active in supporting Measure P. And also, I agree with some of your commenters, given the nature of the relationships and the importance of independence for the Iolero director position, it's very important, in my opinion, that the law enforcement department heads not have a vote on who is selected for the director. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Threet. Moving on to our next public commenter, Barbara Griseki.
Hi there. Thank you all for that presentation. I just want to echo what you've been hearing from folks about the importance of community input on this very important role, especially a role that's had an expansion of its capabilities, as Mr. Threet just outlined in his comments. I do think we will get a robust pool. I agree with Mr. Threet on that. And so that community engagement is really important. Community engagement needs to be more than just posting something on a website. So I would encourage that we allow in the budget some active outreach similar to what was done by Herman G. Hernandez in the redistricting process. I wasn't really happy with the outcome of that, but I think his outreach was essential in getting those voices, particularly voices of the communities of color, which are most impacted by inadequate policing in our community. And I would also say that I agree as well that in the process of determining our next Iolero director, the sheriff's office should not have a role. They oppose the formation of Iolero. They've imposed oversight at every step. They ran the No on Measure P campaign that was based on a lie that Measure P would defund the sheriff. By the way, spoiler alert, their budget increased by $10 million. And I just don't see why an organization that's opposed oversight at every step, who campaigned on a lie against that increased oversight, should have any say in who our next Iolero director is. And the communities that are most impacted by policing, they're the ones that should be listened to. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your comments. The next commenter, phone number ending 0694. Please go ahead when you're permitted to talk for your 3 minutes.
Hi, it's Jim Duffy.
Hi, Jim.
A couple of comments and a question. First, I want to thank the CAC and the Human Resources Department for substantive discussion this evening on opening up the process and making it more public for the Iolero director search. I literally got choked up listening to how effective and wonderful the CAC meeting is tonight. In my opinion, there was a dark year there, and I'm really glad to see this CAC stepping up to the plate. So thank you for that. I want to express full support for the resolution that was in your agenda packet this evening, and I hope that you guys can pass that. And then I have a question. With the advent of the passage of Measure P and the passage of AB 1185, why do we still allow a law enforcement background check of the Iolero director, or of any of the staff for that matter? When I was at the NACOL conference a few weeks ago, I was talking about this with directors of other oversight agencies in California, and none of them allow background checks of their employees by law enforcement. And I pointed out to them that, I said, well, your city agencies, and I was wrong. One of them was the sheriff agency. And they said, yeah, AB 1185, we are not, you guys no longer operate at the will of the sheriff, that you are a body fully empowered to do oversight of the sheriff's office by state law. There is no reason to be allowing this law enforcement background check. And that's my comments. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Point of inquiry for Ms. Kramer, is the background check something that is from the sheriff's department with Iolero, or is that something that is mandatory from like county requirements or regulations as part of this process? What is the requirement for the background check? Why are we doing background check?
So first, let me clarify, it is not our sheriff's office that is conducting the background check. We use a third neutral party. My understanding is it is a requirement. Now, this is something based on Mr. Duffy's comments, something I can check with county council on, but my understanding is there are requirements in order to share some of the confidential information back and forth between the two offices, and for the Iolero staff to see some of this information and database, that has been the practice. Whether there's an underlying law, I couldn't speak to that this evening. I need to do some more research on that. But that's my understanding, is it's based on being able to share all the information that's quite sensitive with the Iolero staff. So that's been the practice.
Great, thank you. Our next public commenter is listed on Zoom as ZG. ZG, once you're available, please go ahead for 3 minutes.
Hey, thanks. Good evening. This is Ara Garcia, community organizer here in Petaluma. I just want to say that I appreciate the comments and questions asked by Evan, Commissioner Pamerton, and Bailey. Y'all definitely are hitting the right questions that us as community members are wanting to know. So thank you. First of all, we also need to acknowledge that there has been no trust within law enforcement within Sonoma County. So those candidates applying should know this and learn how to resonate with us. I mean, they're applying because they're going to be representing us. So Iolero might be a small department, but it is an important position in which we need a transparent community process, where, as I echo the other commenters, law enforcement does not need to have a say when selecting a director. In order to build trust, I would hope that you are allowing us to be part of this as a first step. So something that I also support is the resolution that Kings County's model, but also think about maybe town halls with specific focus groups, just as the redistricting did with their redistricting process. I also applaud Herman G for doing this, was specific focus groups for Latinx, basically folks who are more, Latinx groups, indigenous, queer, Black. I think that's just an important process is community input. Thanks so much for all you do and appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Susan Lamont, you are the next speaker. Please go ahead once you're admitted to the Zoom room, and you have up to 3 minutes for your comments.
Thank you. First, I want to comment about the background check. I was one of only a handful of people who attended all the organizing meetings that came after the Kaye Task Force and before Iolero was in operation. And it was very clear to those of us there that law enforcement had a stranglehold on how this office was defined. And we had to fight back about it. And each meeting, we made some inroads, but my understanding from those meetings is the only thing the person needs to be is an attorney for having that confidentiality. Nothing more is needed. So I hope the background check gets jettisoned. I also want to really, really thank you for emphasizing community involvement. And I want it to be a real focus for you, because also as someone who's been to almost every single meeting since the formation of the CAE task force, it was very clear at the very first CAC meeting that Ms. Navarro's intention was to eliminate oversight and eliminate the public from the process. And we had to fight tooth and nail to keep involved. If you remember, it was, you're allowed to make one comment before the meeting actually happens. You can't comment on anything that happened. So it was insane. So what I would like to hear from you is that you will say to whoever the candidates are, is we intend to keep the public central to this process. And we are expecting whoever the new director is to cooperate fully in that and to make sure that that happens so that nothing will ever happen again like happened with Director Navarro. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker will be Alcina Horstman. Alcina, please go ahead and speak. You have up to 3 minutes once you begin.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Hi there, thank you so much. I just want to thank you again for your time, and also to HR for doing such great research. And I agree with every single one of the callers, and I also want to thank the callers who have been doing this for years and years, coming to all of these meetings. And I agree with everything that's been said, that the public really needs to have input. The sheriff's office really should not have anything to do with this. The background checks should be jettisoned. The community really needs involvement. And I thank you all again for your time. And I just want to, every single person who's spoken tonight has said a lot of really important information, and I really hope you take it to heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your comments. We have 2 left, and then we'll move on to back to our panel. The next public commenter is Keith Reinhardt. Go ahead and speak up to 3 minutes once you are permitted.
Hey, committee. Happy New Year. Good to see you.
Happy New Year.
Echoing and I hope finishing what Mr. Edmonds might have been going to say, the DSA, the Law Enforcement Association of Sonoma County, and the sheriff has no business whatsoever in these decisions. Now, I understand that the lady from HR, the nice lady from HR who gave that great presentation, is going to check out AB 1185 for the reasons that I believe Mr. Threet brought up. And I believe that's appropriate, because following that comment, I will say that even if you get everything you want on the surface in terms of this committee, if you don't think the sheriff's office will be working behind the scenes to undermine Iolero, in my opinion, you're sadly mistaken. I mean, it's almost kind of like a Donald Trump thing, in my opinion. So sure, get all you want. But if you don't think the sheriff's office will be talking to the supervisors behind closed doors, I think it's pretty naive. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. And it looks like that was our last public comment. So we are going to close public comment on this agenda item. Certainly the comments are very well taken. I'm glad that HR is here to hear these comments so they can pass them along to the board and to the other people involved in making these decisions. I would like to take it back to our panel now. There is a resolution before us. The resolution that was included with our agenda packet states as part of the resolution that what we're doing with this resolution is the CAC is making a strong recommendation to the Board of Supervisors and Human Resources Department that a process is adopted for the selection of the Iolero director that engages the wider public, and that we are strongly recommending that the process adopted engages the public similar to the one used by King County, Washington in its selection for the Oversight Committee. So we all have the resolution. Are there any members of our committee or council rather that have any changes or amendments to the resolution? Council Member Estrada, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. I reviewed it and I thought it was really good, but I did want to recommend 2 small changes in the now therefore be it resolved in that paragraph. If we could do Human Resources Department adopt an equitable and transparent hiring process, because for me, when I think of an equitable hiring process, it's not just, you know, it's more than just involving the community. It's also the whole process, like the questions that are asked, how it's developed, who's interviewing, and all parts, not just the community forums. And then with that, also add in that same sentence that directly and authentically engages the wider public. So that additional and authentically.
Anybody have any issues with those recommended changes to the resolution, adding that the process, adopt a process, rather it will be adopt an equitable and transparent process for the selection of Iolero Executive Director that directly, oh, I can't read my own writing now, hold on.
And authentically.
That's the word, directly and authentically engages the wider public. I wrote it down and couldn't read my writing. Thank you, Mr. Humberton. Any issues with those amendments by anybody? No,
I think they're great. I wanted to ask.
Thank you, Dora.
Yes.
I wanted to ask about this issue about the involvement of the Sheriff's Deputies Association, in particular, the Sheriff Deputy and the Sheriff's Law Enforcement Association, and the Sheriff himself. I think those comments from the public raised a very interesting issue, and one that, particularly given the involvement in the current lawsuit, trying to end Measure P or invalidate Measure P, it seems to me that it's a little odd that they would be involved in the selection of the director of Iolero. And I don't know whether it's appropriate to add a third resolution to this, or whether that's out of order. So I'd like some direction from the chair.
Are you specifically regarding modifying this resolution to essentially add the removal of the sheriff or the sheriff's
I wouldn't say the removal exclusion of those from the process. Yeah, that's what I was asking, whether that's appropriate or whether it should be a separate matter.
You know, given that we have had this resolution, I'm not sure if such a substantive change to this resolution is something, I mean, we can make those we can make those alterations, but I think a discussion and a vote may need some additional time. We may not be able to vote on something that significant till next time.
Then I will withdraw my suggestion.
Councilmember Barrera, but however, Councilmember Pemberton, I think it is clear, and I hope the HR representatives have heard the numerous comments of the public, and I think echoed by some on our council, that they do not wish the sheriff to be involved, nor the sheriff's union representatives to be involved in the selection of a Iolero director. So I think that's those comments have certainly been made loud and clear. Councilmember Barrera.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Nancy just said. Maybe you could just add a whereas clause that specifically names the departments or like the positions that Jerry 3 and I think and other people who from the public just mentioned, like the DA's office, the sheriff's department, because my understanding from the presentation is that there was involvement from the sheriff when like the Calle task force was basically working on establishing Iolero and the CAC and determining everything. But now that we have an established department and an established council, I don't think that there's a need for their involvement to recruit a director for a department that's already been created. So I think we could just exclude the departments that were named and law enforcement in general by just adding a whereas clause to the current resolution that we have, in addition to the changes that were suggested by Councilmember Estrada.
We can add it. And so the thing with adding clauses to resolutions is it's very difficult on the fly to add an entire paragraph to the resolution because we have made this available to the public. We've already closed our public comments and are now at the point of voting on the resolution. If we do want to add that as a new paragraph, what I might suggest is not voting on this resolution tonight. We have heard from our HR department on the direction they wish to take with this. If we want to revise our resolution for a vote at the next CAC meeting, we can do that. I think adding essentially an entire clause excluding the sheriff, the DA, and some pretty significant department heads, that may, I think it's best to open that up and to have more public input if we're going to make significant changes like that.
I'm a little confused about this, Mr. Zelig, because we are responding to what the public raised in this resolution. I'm not sure why, and it still addresses, it doesn't change the nature of the resolution. It doesn't take away anything that is already in there. So I'm not sure why it is that we would have to go back and do this again. And that just seems. Let me just finally say that I would rather that we voted on this tonight and then had a separate resolution next month than to take this off to postpone the whole resolution.
Yeah.
So if you think that that's what we need to do, then I would like to suggest that we have a second resolution next month addressing that particular issue.
No, I mean, I think it's better to move forward with a resolution this evening. My concern is that whereas Ms. Estrada's modifications were a couple words, adding a new paragraph, and really the reason is it's 7:15 already. And if we're trying to go back and forth with the proper wording to vote on the resolution, we're going to be spending some significant time figuring out how to word this resolution that we've discussed and voted on, rather than voting on it and having another one at a future date. That's my concern, is just the amount of time we have to come up with the wording necessary. I mean, it's not difficult to amend the resolution, but having everybody agree on the wording and then voting on it may take more time than we have this evening. Yeah. Does anybody else have comments on that, Ms. Woods?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I'm just clarifying that in this process right now, we are voting in essence for the ideal of the resolution, and then we can work out the bits later on at our next meeting. So we can vote on the essence of what we're doing and then move forward. And I think, Nancy, thank you for bringing this forward, because I think, as we have heard this evening from our constituents, that they are passionate about the process being transparent. And I think in an effort to be transparent and also to build the relationships between, or rebuild the relationships between Iolero and also the sheriff's office and the community members and their trust in the sheriff's office, I think it would be important, It would be important that we try to include some of those processes, but at this moment right now, what we're trying to do is, again, just process the initial act or the initial request.
Yeah, that's correct. And really what this resolution is, it's recommending to the board and to HR that the process be engaging of the public and transparent and equitable, and that it engages the public overall. We can certainly have additional resolutions in the future regarding more specifics, who we want included, who we don't want included. I think that's certainly something we can add later on, for sure. And certainly our HR representatives here have heard those comments and know when they speak with the board that this is something very important to us. Councilmember Pearl, I see your hand up as well.
Yeah, a couple things. One is, yeah, I agree, echoing everything. I think that we can have a separate resolution later that focuses on the makeup of who's involved in sort of this hiring process. And I had a question about the background check. I'm assuming that is a requirement for all county employees. I mean, I think maybe the question is there a different level of background check required for this than for any other position in the county? And I think as long as it's the same, it doesn't really matter, right? So that's my question to the HR folks about the background check issue.
Ms. Kramer, are you able to let us know that information, if the background check for the Iolero director is any different than any other, for example, any other attorney position within the county?
Yes, it is different. It is if so a regular position, like a background check for my position, for example, would be the county standard background check. Iolero's director's position would be more comparable to what we do when people are working in the area of law enforcement. So it's a very thorough background process. It goes deeper than just kind of checking into, like for me, it would look at my criminal background, my driving record, my social security check, my, make sure I am who I am. I don't have, felony convictions, because I have money in my department. I don't have a credit problem. This one would go more into character. It would go more into much deeper into prior work history, and goes a little bit deeper into any sort of involvement or issues with law, with the law, or sort of establishing a pattern of what that person has been like in their past, most recent years. It would be, yeah. So it is more thorough.
Great. Councilmember Sullivan.
Yeah, just a real quick follow-up question for Ms. Kramer. Since we're on the topic of hiring and background checks, is for this kind of position, and you also said it applied to law enforcement as well, is there a search for sort of open source intelligence searches for any affiliations with extremist groups? Is that part of it?
Yes, there would be a search, a social media search. That kind of information is looked at to see if there's any affiliations that they can find. Yes.
And is that done by your department, or is that separate?
That would be done by this third party.
Okay.
Specializes in this type of background. Yes. And, there are many positions within the county who go through this thorough background. Many positions in many departments, sheriff's office, probation, district attorney, public defender, and Iolero is basically individuals who work in those offices, even at the staff level, are going through these thorough background processes because of the sensitivity of the information that they are exposed to and the services that they provide. So that's again, we've talked about whether or not that's legally required. I'll do a little bit of digging into that, but that's the county's practice. So Iolero director isn't unique, as in it's the only person outside of the sheriff's office who would go through that. Their staff do. Many other departmental staff in other departments do as well.
Councilmember Pemberton, I see your hand is up as well.
Ms. Kramer, I have two other questions. One is, when do you think these panels will be selected? When is that process? I mean, you're talking about when are you going to be looking for the department heads, the subject matter experts, the community people?
Once we start developing the plan and we're getting ready, right around the time just before we're getting ready to open it, or while at the very early part of the position, sort of the filing period being open, we're going to start trying to secure the panelists, because it is a full day long commitment. And so we want to give them, a good 4 to 6 weeks notice for them to be able to, plan accordingly so that they can participate in the process. So I would say within the first 2 weeks, we want to have the panel secure by the time that recruitment closes and we say, okay, all submissions need to be in by X date, hopefully even a few weeks ahead of that.
Okay, so the second question that I have is on these background checks, you go through a third party, but who sends the names to the third party?
Human resources. So once the candidate is selected, then the contract is with us, and then we send the candidate's information. The candidate knows all of this is going on. We send the candidate's information to this firm, and then this firm completes their background, and then they submit the completed background. Spencer, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it comes back to county council.
It comes back to me, and I actually give it to county council.
You give it to county council, yeah. And so part of that practice, county council reviews it, I review it, and the county administrator reviews it. Is that correct, Spencer?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't go, the names don't go through the sheriff's department.
No. Eventually the sheriff's office knows who it is. Yes.
They know the candidates.
Well, in the past, they've had representatives participating in the interview process. So yes, they do know who the candidates are.
But not as part of the background check, but you're talking about as part of the.
Correct.
Right, okay. Okay,
The sheriff's office has received the information from the background check, just to, if we've identified that there are any concerns at all or red flags. So that has been shared with them if there's any areas of concern.
After it's been reviewed by county council and human resources.
Correct.
That's.
And can you explain to me the purpose of that?
Because we want to ensure that the sheriff's office, part of the relationship and the function and the effectiveness is for the office, the staff and the director of Iolero to work with the sheriff. So the past practice has been to share after we believe those people that I've mentioned, county council, myself, believe that this person passes this background. It's a courtesy to the sheriff to review the background, to make sure that we are correct in our assessment, that we see no red flags that would prevent the person from moving forward. And that I believe is based on the good faith of trying to have these two offices have trust and work well together, because it is important for the two offices to have an effective working relationship. That's what past practice has been.
Can I comment on that?
It
seems to me that that is a one-way street. Nobody is sending information about the sheriff or the sheriff's department to Iolero in any assessment, in any hiring process. So it does seem to me that that is a one-way process, and I'll leave it there.
Well, I appreciate the comment, and I think, you know, goes along with the other comments that we've heard on the sentiment of, you know, whether or not the sheriff's staff or the sheriff himself or any representatives of the Deputy Sheriff's Association be involved in this process. So noted.
Thank you.
I was muted, sorry. At this point, then I will close this discussion and bring it back for a roll call vote. We are voting on the resolution. Well, is there a motion to approve the resolution by the CAC regarding the selection procedures for the Iolero director with our amendments? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to adopt it.
Councilmember Pemberton, is there a motion? Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
I saw Dora Estrada's hand up, so that's seconded. Ms. Griffin, will you please take a roll call vote as to the passage of the resolution regarding the selection procedures for Iolero with the amendments from Councilmember Barrera? Melanie, you're on mute.
I have to unmute myself. Councilmember Bailey.
Aye.
Councilmember Barrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Estrada.
Aye.
Flores is absent. Councilmember Pearl.
Aye.
Councilmember Pemberton.
Aye.
Councilmember Solomon.
Aye.
Councilmember Woods.
Aye.
And Councilmember Zelik.
Aye. We get everybody? Okay.
I believe so.
Great. So that resolution passes. We will be sure that the resolution is communicated to the Board of Supervisors and Human Resources. To Ms. Kramer and Mr. Keywood, thank you very much for your presentation. And thank you for initially listening to the comments regarding the public access to this process and the public input for our community. And hopefully you will take our other comments to the board and to your department and let them know about the resolution and about our wishes for the new director. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I may just say,
Yes.
equity and diversity outreach, we have new practices where that is something that we will be attempting to accomplish in all of the county's recruitment. So, you know, diversity outreach, having an equitable process, diversity representation on the interview panels, that is something that we will be striving to accomplish throughout this whole entire process.
Great. Thank you again very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. All right. While they are leaving, I'm going to move on to agenda item number 3. Agenda item number 3 this evening. Once I can get my agenda back, sorry. One moment. There we go. Agenda item number 3 this evening is regarding a discussion and consideration of the passage of a resolution of censure of Sheriff Essick in violation of social media policies. When we discussed this matter briefly at our last meeting, it was requested that we have further discussions about this and that we perhaps have a resolution of censure, which is showing our disapproval of the posts. At the last meeting, we indicated that we would be discussing this more again today. The sheriff, Mark Essick, was invited to tonight's meeting. Again, the purpose of him being invited was to offer any comment that he had or any input into these issues. Before we move on to the policies and the resolution itself, I do wish to read the letter written to the CAC by Sheriff Essick. It has been provided to all members of the CAC, but because it was just received on December 29th, it was provided to Ms. Griffin, who was unavailable to provide it to the CAC till today. And so it did not have a chance to go with our agenda packet. So I do want to read the letter in full for our public so that everyone is aware of the comments made by Sheriff Essick. So I will state that this letter was written December 29th. It was addressed to me and the CAC. It states the following in full. Mr. Zelig, I'm writing to acknowledge your invitation to the Community Advisory Council, CAC, on Monday, January 3rd, 2022. As I understand it, the purpose of this meeting is to hold some sort of hearing where my conduct will be evaluated against Sheriff's Office policy. I am, quote, to address the panel or make any comments on the issue, unquote. In reviewing the Iolero Ordinance, Article 27, Section 2-397, Establishment and Appointment of Iolero Community Advisory Council, CAC, there is no delegated authority or process for the CAC to conduct such hearings. It is problematic and concerning for the CAC to engage in activities that are outside the scope of the Iolero Ordinance. It could serve to create confusion for the public and blur the role of the CAC as a policy advisory group if the CAC were to step into the role of investigating conduct, weighing evidence, and making determinations of policy violations. That role, as defined under the Iolero Ordinance, is reserved exclusively for the Iolero Director. In the spirit of cooperation and transparency, I would like to share with you the results of an investigation by the State of California Fair Political Practices Commission. The FPPC is vested with the authority to investigate elected office holders for violations of the California Government Code and the California Code of Regulations. I believe the investigation by the FPPC addresses the concerns raised by the CAC. I have attached both the notice and the findings by the FPPC for your review. The FPPC found, quote, after review of the complaint and evidence provided, the Enforcement Division will not pursue an enforcement action in this matter, unquote. In conclusion, it is my sincere wish that the CAC and the Sheriff's Office continue to work closely and collaboratively on the review and establishment of Sheriff's Office policies, procedures, practices, training, and initiatives. The Sheriff's Office recognizes the outstanding work that has been achieved so far by the CAC and stands ready to continue our collaborative work. While I appreciate your invitation to participate on Monday, January 3rd, 2022, I will not be in attendance for the above stated reasons. Best regards, signed Mark Essick, Sheriff Coroner. Included with Sheriff Essick's letter was a copy of a complaint initially reported to the Fair Political Practices Commission. That complaint alleged that Sheriff Essick used the words of a private citizen in order to create the pretense for a political mass mailing. The allegations were mass mailings sent at a public expense. And that was the allegation that the FPPC reviewed, mass mailings sent at the public expense. The FPPC was provided with a copy of the Facebook posting by both Mr. Threet as well as Sheriff Essick. And in response, the Fair Practices Political Commission stated that the letter is in response to the sworn complaint submitted to the Enforcement Division. After review of the complaint and evidence provided, the Enforcement Division will not pursue an enforcement action in this matter. If you have any questions, they give information on somebody who can be contacted at the FPPC. So that is what was included and sent to the CAC from Sheriff Mark Essick. We will make these documents available publicly, but just because we were not able to do so before the meeting, I wanted to make sure I read that for our public. Moving on, I do believe that when this matter was brought up, it was suggested by our council member, more than one council member, that we take up a resolution to censure or publicly comment on this issue. And I think why that was brought about was because as we were examining these policies and looking at what can be done if the sheriff violates the policy, it was brought to our attention by our liaison, Lieutenant Cutting, who's here tonight, that essentially the sheriff is the policy, and that the sheriff makes the policies for the sheriff enforces the policies for the sheriff, and while the sheriff is supposed to follow those policies, there is no enforcement mechanism to show any displeasure or disapproval of the sheriff when he fails to follow policies. And so we did hear from members of our community regarding the sheriff's policies, specifically regarding the social media post. And I do want to be clear that in the resolution we have before us, this is not necessarily about what Sheriff Essex said directed toward Jerry Threet. And I want to make sure everybody understands that our resolution is specific to that. Rather, this resolution, which has been drafted by our committee and has been made available publicly, the draft resolution, is specifically regarding the statements of support for a candidate that was previously endorsed and supported by Sheriff Essick, and the use of the Sonoma Sheriff government website for a post that is seemingly a political support of a candidate as part of the post towards and directed at, I suppose, Mr. Threet. And so with that being said, I would like to open up for our panel discussion. We've all been given the specific policies in place. And I want to open up this discussion for the resolution because I want to be clear that what our resolution does is solely to recommend to, number one, express disapproval of the political posting by Sheriff Essick if we find that it was a political posting. And as Sheriff Essex says, a formal investigation can only be undertaken by Iolero. And so what this resolution does is it expresses disapproval by the community and represented by the CAC of the political postings and recommends to Iolero that a formal investigation take place. I am unsure if Iolero has at this point received a formal complaint regarding these postings. They may have. I know that the FPPC clearly has, and they've evaluated that. But what this would do is it would recommend to Iolero and to our Board of Supervisors that a more formal investigation be done and that action be taken to investigate what could be done for these postings, since again, the CAC and our resolutions will have no actual legal effect. It is instead a recommendation and resolution for our board and for Iolero to take further action. So in that regard, I do disagree that this is not within the purview of the CAC and what we do. What we do is we are the bridge and the voice between our community and the sheriff's office. Our community has shared with us disapproval of this posting in that it may be for political purposes and should not be done on a county official website. And this resolution would express that disapproval in a more public manner. And so I open up now to our panel for discussion on either the policies, the posting, or how you feel this may have violated those policies such that this resolution is either appropriate or not appropriate if you feel it is not. I'd now like to open up to our panel if there's anybody who wishes to give any statements or comments on this. Councilmember Barrera, yes.
Thank you. I agree with what you said about the disagreement of saying that we don't have authority to review this. We're not actually conducting a public hearing. We're just going off of something that was brought to our attention, and we do represent the community as you stated. So my other comment is I would partially agree with Sheriff Essex analysis of what the FPPC concluded, but I do think that in the end, you did say this will be made available to the public. So the letter that the FPPC sent to Sheriff Essex after they reviewed the complaint says that within 14 days, the complainant will be notified of their intent. And there are 4 bullet points. The first is to investigate the allegations of the complaint. The second is to refer the complainant to another, the complaint, not the complainant, to another governmental agency. The third is to take no action on the complaint because on the basis of the information provided, the commission does not appear to have jurisdiction to investigate. Or the 4th bullet point, take no action on the complaint because the allegations of the complaint do not warrant the commission's further action. So they do say that, as Sheriff Essex mentioned, they will not be taking further action, but we don't know why or what that investigation actually entailed. So it seems like the FPPC needs to provide, I would say, we should have a reason as to why they're not going to take further action. And if one of the reasons is because it was referred to the wrong department, then who would that actually go to? Because if this is a political thing and the Board of Supervisors doesn't have jurisdiction to review this, then I think we have to amend our resolution unless we can actually do something on our end or make that type of recommendation, or we just need to know what type of further action can be taken. And I think we should have that from the FPPC. They didn't actually provide a reason as to why they're not going to proceed. So those are my only comments for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, the FPPC letter, it does appear to be the letter within 14 days. And of those 4 options they have, it appears that at least from the letter, that they will not pursue an enforcement action in this matter. But again, what the FPPC looks at is very specific regulations regarding elected officials. That is separate from what Iolero looks at regarding sheriff's deputies, the sheriff, and following county policy, which is not the same. It's also different than what our Board of Supervisors would look at when our resolution is passed, if it is. It's different from what they would look at regarding county regulations and so forth. So I think even though the FPPC decided that they do not have enforcement action based on the specific complaint, that does not necessarily mean that our Iolero recommendations or our Board of Supervisor cannot do something when it is referred to them. Yeah. I also want to just a point of clarification. We are doing a public hearing. What we're not doing is a investigation. We are not investigating more than what we have as far as the policies, the posting by Sheriff Essex, and on its face, what has been suggested as a violation of those policies specifically regarding the endorsement support of a political campaign or initiative, using the content posted for personal use, and the policy against political purposes or conducting private commercial activities on county social media. So it's those three specific issues. And again, the specific statement of indicating that the assistant sheriff was authentic as an executive law enforcement leader of color and a highly respected law enforcement leader. Those statements are the issues that are in our resolution, and it is those statements only that we are looking at as far as whether they created a public support of a political candidate by the sheriff. And I just want to make sure, is there anybody on our CAC who has not received or reviewed the resolution that's before us? Okay, everybody has. Are there any other comments regarding your views of these policies or the statements by Sheriff Essick? And certainly if there's anybody who believes that these policies did not, or sorry, these postings did not appear to violate these policies, we want to hear those comments as well. Okay, there's no comments at this time that I see. I'm going to open this up now to public comment. The resolution as well as the county policies have all been made available publicly as part of our agenda packet. Actually, before I open to the public, Lieutenant Cutting, is there anything on behalf of the sheriff's office that you would like to add in addition to the letter written and read by that I read on behalf of Mark Essick?
No, I wouldn't add anything other than what the sheriff has said. Your current, the direction that you're talking about now, as far as referring this to Iolero for further investigation, I think that would be an appropriate direction for it, as opposed to conducting an investigation. And anytime you look at policy versus something being done, that is technically an investigation. So while you say it's not, I think it is, and I think the appropriate role is for Iolero on that. And I don't disagree with that method and that direction that you're going with that at all.
Thank you. And before we open up to the public, let me read what we would be resolving. The resolution states after the whereas paragraphs indicating our basis for these, it says, now therefore be it resolved that the Community Advisory Council finds that Sheriff Essick's above referenced Facebook postings created the appearance of endorsement of a political candidate for office and compromised and damaged the mission, function, reputation, and professionalism of the sheriff's office. The Community Advisory Council expresses severe disapproval of this political posting by Sheriff Essick and recommends that Iolero undertake an investigation into this matter, and that the Board of Supervisors refer this matter to County Council for investigation of the county's policy violations by Sheriff Essick. So that's what we are putting forth for a vote. And with that, let me open up for public comment. Any of those individuals who wish to give public comment on this matter, please raise your hands and I will call you in order. We will have 3 minutes per person to give public comment on this issue. The first hand I see up is Diana Anglero. Hi, Diana. Can you hear us? Diana, we can't hear you if you're trying to speak. I see you are unmuted and it does say talking permitted, but I can't hear you. Can you hear us? You know, Diana, I can't hear you. We are going to move to the next public. Oh, wait, Diana, your hand went up again. It says talking permitted. Go ahead and speak if you're able to. Yeah. We're not able to hear you, Diana. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next individual, Evan P. And we'll come back to you and see if you're able to correct the technical issues when we get to you. Evan P., go ahead when you're ready.
Yes, thank you for the time. Yeah, Mr. Zelig and CIC, I think you're completely acting within the bounds of what you're supposed to do by listening to the community and being a liaison for Iolero. That seems abundantly obvious. Obviously, this is not a court of law, like county council or anything of that nature. Deputy Cutting, I hope you're listening into this carefully. How incredibly on brand for an organization that has actively opposed oversight to take advantage of the fact to refer this to an entity that currently has no director and is searching for an interim director, while Sheriff Essick is not going to seek his seat because the people he is beholden to is the voters. And he knows he can't win again because this is the same group of people that ran a campaign called Transparent Sonoma to oppose transparency. So pardon me if the public has a hard time taking your credibility and Sheriff Essick's credibility serious on this matter. And let me just, I didn't even want to go this route, but that letter is just really surprising, but then not at all, actually. Let me say it like this. I don't think Sheriff Essick even knows who Zora is. The lack of cultural competency in the Sheriff's Department about what racism actually means is staggering. Staggering. Because what you just did was actually tell on yourselves so badly. Because what is racist is to actually oppose the comment that not all skin folk are kinfolk, because it's to imply that everyone thinks the same based on their race. So I mean, like, I am never shocked by like baby dictator wannabe Trump Sheriff Essick, and I didn't want to be personally insulting like that, but it's just like, wow, this guy is supposed to be a servant of the public. So really what he's done is another disservice to the integrity of Ingram and his campaign, because the same people that brought you Measure P are going to bring you a counter campaign, because Ingram is basically running on Essick's record because they're virtually identical in policy, which is the whole point of the original post to begin with. It's not a racial post, it's a policy post. And again, y'all don't even know who Zora is. You don't. Have you read any Zora? Did you know that that was a common pop culture sentiment if you are culturally educated? Probably not. So again, thank you, CAC, for doing your job, not cowering or backing down to the bully with the badge. And I can't wait for Sheriff Essick's tenure to be over and actually start moving forward in a productive way for this county, and have people that defend what is right for the people and the voters of this county rather than their own personal agenda. And people won't abuse their platforms for personal vendettas. It is so unbecoming of law enforcement.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next individual listed, ZG. ZG, go ahead and give public comment up to 3 minutes once you're able to speak.
Sure, good evening. Thanks, everyone. I just wanted to actually echo that and say, basically what you have heard, I cannot stress enough that it is crucial for a robust community process in electing the next Iolero director, and why law enforcement should be opted out of the process. Because I think we have heard enough that the sheriff is the policy. We don't need a sheriff to be the policy. It needs to be an us. And that's all I have to say about that. And appreciate y'all's stance in this resolution and for doing your job. Thank you.
Thank you. Turning next to Kathleen Finnegan. Kathleen, you have up to 3 minutes once you're permitted to talk.
No, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to see this issue coming to the surface. It is a black and white issue, and I don't mean that as any kind of racial configuration, or it is a simple issue because this sheriff has already established himself as a rogue. he is now nationally regarded as one of the great rogue sheriffs of the country. If you've seen the Nation article that hit the streets not too long ago, there is not much of a debate about this, and I'm grateful to see the excellent wording of this resolution. There are policies that are pointed out, two sheriff department policies, one a county policy, and then it's another one, 91H. It's still the same one. And so very clearly, this sheriff has violated his department's own policy as well as the county policy. And the censure should proceed exactly as worded. And I want to express my gratitude for the community council to take this courageous step. It's the right thing to do, and there's no question about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Turning now to Alcina Horstman. Please go ahead and up to 3 minutes when you're able to.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I would just like to say that I think it's incredibly appropriate for this panel to censure the sheriff, and it is a policy issue, and that's what the CAC is here to do, to be the intermediary between the public and law enforcement and to keep tabs on our community. So in my opinion, it was an egregious use of his office. It was out of line and out of policy. And to me, it makes absolute sense for there to be censure. And as it was said before, this isn't a court of law. This is just a moral commentary about the policy that we are trying to observe. So thank you so much. I agree that it's courageous, but I also agree that it's really important. It's a moral comment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next commenter, Susan Lamont.
Thank you. I just want to thank all the people who have spoken and say that I agree with everything they've said. I also want to just take this opportunity to thank you for your courage in doing this. And hopefully I'll be able to thank you for passing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Turning now to Barbara Griseki.
There, again, I just want to thank everyone for their comments prior to mine. I'm in full support of the censure of the sheriff. I think what he did was really egregious, and it's kind of humiliating for the sheriff's office for him to sink that low. Not surprising, but it's sad. And I think that the censure is a great statement by the CSC in support of the community outrage against his actions. And again, I thank you and I encourage you to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last public commenter, Robert Edmonds, and then we will come back to the panel. Go ahead, Mr. Edmonds.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to also thank everyone for passing this or for moving this resolution forward. And also want to thank Mr. Cutting for actually contradicting Mark Essex, or at least some of Mark Essex evaluation, and saying that this is in fact an appropriate use of CAC to recommend that Iolero take this on. And, you know, having gone through the process of Iolero, of forming Iolero and the Community Advisory Council, I want to say that this is in fact exactly what we discussed on the Law Enforcement Accountability Subcommittee as an appropriate use to be able to apply political pressure because of the way that California laws are constructed around police accountability and the limited amount of access and actual what people refer to as teeth in law enforcement accountability practices in California. So being able to examine these policies, which are the basis of politics around law enforcement, and make these kinds of recommendations so that Iolero can use the authority that it has and the investigative purview to kind of force the sheriff's hands on some of these things, because we all know people that have been watching Mark Essex and the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office for years. They have always resisted any form of law enforcement accountability. Looking at Essex time on the on the task force, he was the only member of 21 that voted against the formation of Iolero and the 21 recommendations of the CAE task force. So again, I just want to thank you, and I can't say enough how glad I am to see that I see this new sort of empowerment that's coming into the CAC, and I look forward to seeing more of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edmonds. Let's try, I said it was the last one, but let's try Diana Anglero again. I see her hand raised. Hopefully the technical issues are worked out. Diana, can you hear us and talk at this point? No, looks like we can't hear you, Diana. Your hand, yep. Go ahead and speak. You're in the room. Go ahead and speak when you're able to, if you can. Okay, I'm sorry, Diana. We can't hear you at all. I'm not sure if it's an issue with the microphone over there or what might be happening, but we can't hear you at all. Okay, we're gonna move on. Hopefully Diana can figure that out. If so, raise your hand again at the end for public comment. We'll be happy to take your comments. Going back now to our panel, we have all received it. Are there any other, excuse me, panelists, CAC comments or anything that anybody wants to discuss on this matter? Councilmember Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to put a word in for this resolution and just obviously to support it. I think it's important to put this forward, and I think it was totally appropriate of us to invite the sheriff on tonight to speak. I think whenever you're speaking about someone else's actions in public, it's a fair place given this public profile kind of situation here. I think it's really important that we invited him to speak on his own behalf and not kind of assume what was going on for him in this. That said, I also think the resolution is good, but in my view, there's additional questions beyond the resolution, and I think those should probably be forwarded to whatever staff attorney gets assigned this investigation. And again, this is just a public hearing, obviously not an investigation. So just wanted to kind of echo those things, and hope everyone's going to vote for it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments from members of our CAC? Okay, I see no additional hands raised. What I will do then is I will bring this for a motion. Is there a motion for passage of the resolution that has been brought before us regarding Sheriff Essex social media posting dated November 8th, 2021? Is there a motion to pass this resolution?
I'll move it again.
Councilmember Pemberton moves to pass the resolution. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
I see a Councilmember Solomon seconds that. Ms. Griffin, will you please do a roll call into the passage of this resolution?
Councilmember Bailey,
Aye.
Councilmember Barrera. Aye. That was an aye?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. Councilmember Estrada.
Aye.
Councilmember Pearl.
Aye.
Councilmember Pemberton.
Aye.
Councilmember Solomon.
Aye.
Councilmember Woods.
Aye.
Councilmember Zelig.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. So that resolution has passed and it will be signed and provided to both the Iolero as well as a formal, resolution of complaint, and as to the Board of Supervisors as well, for however they wish to use it. Thank you very much. We will close that item number 3 on tonight's agenda. And looking at item agenda number 4, this is the bylaw review and revision ad hoc proposed changes. We have all been provided with the proposed changes to the bylaws. I will open this up now for a panel discussion. If there is anybody on our panel with the CAC who wishes to be heard on any of the changes to the bylaws, recommended changes, anybody who wishes to be heard on any of these changes. Councilmember Pemberton, I see you are off mute. Go ahead.
Thanks. I first of all, whoever that ad hoc committee is, I know it's Lorena and you, Evan, but I'm not sure who else. You guys did a great job. So thank you very much. It's not the most interesting work in the world, and you did a really fabulous job. I just had one question, and that has to do with the ethics section. I marked it.
It's on page 4 of 10.
Yeah, okay. So the Measure P ordinance requires that we follow the Code of Ethics of NACOL. And I guess what I wanted to find out is whether you considered adding that and then decided that that would be redundant to number A, to part A here, or whether we should add that as a specific thing that we will, the council members must follow the Code of Ethics of NACOL.
I'm not sure if that was just not listed specifically as NACOL. I know that that's listed as part of our CAC requirements, our qualifications at this point is to adhere to the ethical standards of NACOL. That is a requirement for the members of the CAC. We can likely add that wording to this, to the ethics section. It may be a good idea. Councilmember Barrera had a very, very, very large part in these modifications and did quite a lot of work on this. And so I think we could probably have that added just to reiterate that CAC members should comply with the ethical obligations of NACOL, because it is one of our qualifications. I think that's something that we can add.
I think that should be fine. Aside from the section where it's already mentioned about being a member of NACOL, but I think that's a good one that we missed.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Pemberton.
Councilmember Barrera, I saw that you also had your hand up on something else as well.
I just wanted to say for the community members who probably may not have had a chance to review the red line version or the clean version of our draft bylaws, we did incorporate the language that was part of Measure P as it was written, since that is something that the voters approved. So I just wanted to point that out. And we used examples of other boards and commissions that the county already has to add things that were missing that we felt were important for our council to have in our bylaws. So I just wanted to note that.
Thank you. Are there any other council members with comments, either things you liked, didn't like, want added, want removed, anything at all that you have regarding these amended bylaws? Okay, then what I will do now is I will open up for public comment on this agenda item, specifically regarding the intended revisions of the CAC bylaws. I see Jim Duffy, phone number 0694. See, Jim, I'm learning that's you. Jim Duffy, go ahead and comment up to 3 minutes once you're accepted.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my comments. My first comment is I'd like to see you adjust Article 2 purpose, where you talk about the Measure P, and to actually pull that language out of Section 2-397A of the Evelyn Cheatham Ordinance, and put the full language in there that you're doing from that section, and not just quote it, because I think that's important to have that in the bylaws, what the actual purpose of the CAC is. And it's pretty concise in there. I'm also going to encourage you guys not to vote on passing this tonight if you haven't had time to really look at it and chew on it and be totally comfortable with your vote yes. And the reason I'm saying that is because the founding CAC, which I was a member of, voted to pass bylaws that we did not chew on, and it came back to bite us in the ass. Because there wound up being some disagreements between the director and the founding chair, and he removed the founding chair, and it angered the public, and there was no process for dealing with that well. And we actually passed an adjustment or an amendment to the bylaws that you guys didn't see because it was never updated on the website due to lack of staff resources, but you can find it in the minutes that are on the Iolero website of the October 2nd, 2017 CAC meeting, because we created a governance subcommittee to deal with when there are problems within the CAC or between CAC and Iolero staff. And I think you should look at that and consider establishing some kind of mechanism, because now that you're cooking with gas, it's only a matter of time before something comes up. And we had some really smart people, like you have some really smart people on your subcommittee for bylaws that worked on it and established it. And I got to admit, I'm not one of them, and God bless them, I was happy to vote for it, but recommending that you do something like that. Thanks so much for taking my comments.
Thank you. I do not see any other individuals. Hold on, let me turn off this timer. I do not see any other individuals with their hands raised for public comment, so I will bring this back to the CAC. Is there anybody, so regarding the 2-397, because one of the main reasons we were amending these bylaws is to include Measure P and make sure that the CAC is in compliance with Measure P. So it does make sense, and that is a good comment, Mr. Duffy, on using the specific language from Measure P in our bylaws, the exact language of Measure P. Would there be anybody on the CAC opposed to modification of Article 2, the purpose, to in there as well include the specific language of Measure P from 2-397 of the ordinance itself? Anybody opposed to that? No, and I see heads shaking no. Okay. What I think we can do then, and I think it may be a good idea also because of our time tonight, is for us to make that modification and have this actually up for a vote at the next CAC election, so that between now and then, the CAC members also have an opportunity to again read and consider and digest all of the new bylaws before we actually take a vote on the draft. Okay, so I see heads nodding. What I'd like to do then is not take a vote on this today. Leave this item open. We will take further public comments later in February. But what I'd like to do is bump this to the February meeting to make some minor modifications to the purpose to include the specific language of 2-397 and present those modifications for a vote at the next CAC meeting. Councilman
Could we also look at those minutes and I'm happy to look for them if you want, the minutes that Jim had referred to about the governance committee and then adding the NACOL code of ethics.
Yes,
Thank you.
we will also add the NACOL code of ethics to the ethics part. And we will look, Councilmember Pemberton, thanks for volunteering for that. If you want to find those minutes and get them to us so we can see a little bit about what Mr. Duffy meant regarding the governance section, we can see if that's something appropriate. If our bylaws committee, send that to me, I'll get it to the other members of our bylaws committee, our subcommittee, our ad hoc, and we can take a look at that for possible inclusion. So we're gonna, we'll table this tonight for a vote with some additional information before the next time. Councilmember Solomon.
Yeah, I just had one question about are the bylaws supposed to handle a situation where how to describe how we are to interact with the public? I mean,
really the bylaws operate as the bylaws are how we operate, what we do, how we do it. So if there is something that we want to include about dealings with the public and how we engage with the public, we can put that in our bylaws. Again, the bylaws are our roadmap. They tell us what we are authorized to do, what we can do, what we do, and what our direction is. So it gives us some rules. So I mean, we can add whatever we want as long as they're rules we all agree on and vote for.
Okay, I know in the past I had heard some concern about kind of real fiery language or abusive language that was coming from the public to members of the board or panelists or whatnot. And I don't know if that's handled in these, was that within the scope of this?
Are you asking about how the public engages, like in meetings, how we?
Yeah, and also how we respond.
Code of conduct.
Yeah.
Separate from the bylaws, separate from these bylaws, we do have a design team alliance and a CAC code of conduct, which are listed in every agenda item and something that we adhere to and that we encourage the public to adhere to as well.
Okay.
We can't really tell the public how to operate in our bylaws. The bylaws are only how we operate as the CAC.
Right. I'm just trying to understand the scenarios that this document should cover.
Similar to a corporation that explains how to operate the corporation, when to vote, how many members. It's similar to that. It internally establishes how we want to handle issues within the CAC, how we replace members, how we select our members, what we do in issues of conflicts of interest, how long our officers serve for, what the officers are, our various duties. So it kind of lays out that roadmap for how we operate as a CAC. And really it gives us direction. For example, if somebody were to resign from the CAC, it gives us information about how to fill that position. It gives us direction. And of course, these bylaws can be modified as needed, but since Measure P, we wanted to modify them to set us forth in a way that complies with Measure P as well.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Sure. Councilmember Barrera, yes.
I just wanted to add to that there's already a standards and guidelines section in the bylaws, and we didn't specifically add the design team alliance or anything like that because it's one, we've already adopted those, and two, if the next council wants to change those, they have the ability to do so, and we don't want to be too specific on the bylaws where now we have to change the bylaws every single time. So we left the standards and guidelines kind of open so that we have a business conduct and some kind of protocol that's adopted, but that could be changed later, and you don't necessarily have to go back and revise the bylaws every single time.
Thank you.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Okay, with that then, there are some modifications that it sounds like we would like made to these. So we will not vote on this passage of these bylaws at this time. Instead, Ms. Griffin, if we could add that to our February meeting for a review of the revised bylaws and a vote at that time. Okay, I'm going to close that item agenda, and we are now going to move on to the next agenda item, which is public comment. This is public comment that is not as to any specific item, agenda item, but rather a public comment that is within the subject matter of the CAC generally. We will open up public comment and give each individual up to 3 minutes for public comments. And I'm looking for members of our public. If you do wish to be heard, please raise your hand on Zoom and we will begin calling people shortly. I do not see any hands raised for public comments. I do know we took public comment during each of our items, so it seems as if the public has spoken for tonight. With that, then I will bring it back to our panel. Are there any other suggestions for agenda items or anything else that anybody wishes to add before we adjourn for this evening? Okay, I see no hands raised. Yep, Councilmember
Can you bring
Pemberton.
back the second part of the resolution that we decided not to discuss or not to consider regarding the hiring and practices and who the members of the various panels are?
Oh, yes. So the issue was whether we wanted to add to our resolution regarding the search for a director of Iolero, whether we wanted a second resolution regarding the sheriff's office and or the police union to not participate in that process. That is not currently part of our resolution. If a resolution is brought to our attention or something is brought to our attention for future, we can always add that to a future meeting. Okay, any other public comments, or I'm sorry, any other comments of our panel? Lieutenant Cunning, any other comments before we go? Okay, with that, I will adjourn this evening's meeting. Thank you all. Thank you to our public for joining us as well. Thank you to all of our members. Thank you, Lieutenant Cutting and our HR staff. Thank you, as always, Melanie, for being there at this time when we don't have an Iolero director, for holding down the fort and keeping us informed. And I will now adjourn this meeting. The next CAC meeting will be held February 7th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Until then, see everybody and have a great evening. Happy New Year.